Welcome in once again, Knight fans. It's basketball craziness going on here. We're about to react to the Big 12 conference schedule drop for UCF. Big 12 conference women's basketball finally put the schedules out. In defense, they did get theirs out before the men's schedule, so I'll give them that much credit. But for those of us who've been waiting for this schedule at long last, it is here, and I'm here with the incomparable Bryson Turner and the great Eric Lopez. I would refer to him as his normal nom de plume of Sultan of Stickball, but no stickball here. It's basketball today. This is what we're talking about. Don't worry. We'll have a similar episode when softball does drop their schedule, Eric, I promise. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Bryson, I'll start with you. We're got the non-conference slate here. What's really the thing that you're looking at that kind of jumps out to you?
Well, Sytia Messer sort of has a strategy that she does when she coordinates her schedules, and that is to rack up the wins for the program before they get into conference play. But you throw in maybe a couple of games where you can really test this team to give them a stress test before going into conference play. And this time around, that stress, the two stress tests, there's going to be one home and one away. The first one is going to be the home match. It's going to be game number 2 of the season against the Marquette of the Big East, who got made the NCAA tournament, lost to 7-seed Ole Miss. And then they go on the road to play the Mountain West regular season champ in UNLV for their Thanksgiving Classic in Vegas at 3 p.m. on November 27th, so for Thanksgiving week. Other than them, every other non-conference opponent for this women's basketball team had an RPI ranking of 158th or worse last year. So this is not a stranger to the Sytia Messer that I've kind of known from a scheduling perspective.
Right, absolutely. This is that same place where this is year 3 of restocking the cupboard. She's got plenty of good young players that are promising. She's got Caitlin Peterson. You know, all of that is what you're looking for. You're looking for these kids. I say kids. They're looking for these student athletes to mesh and grow some more or any of that. Eric Lopez, looking at this, I mean, you know, beyond the obvious strategy of tune-up here, what would you add here for this particular portion of the schedule?
Well, let me just say, I'm going to applaud Coach Messer. I actually think this is a little much more difficult non-conference, certainly than last year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I mean, Marquette's a marquee home game. That's a good get to get them to come here for Thursday night, November 7th. I don't know, Kyle, what the NFL slate is that Thursday night prime game. Hopefully, for your sake, it's not the Jacks because Marquette's legit. So credit to them. I'm assuming that UCF will return the favor in the future and go to Marquette probably as early as the following year.
I'm making that. I have the appropriate NBA tie ready. Coach Messer's favorite tie ready to when I go out and cover that game.
Now, and then they host Stetson on Saturday, November 16th. And I know you look at the resume. You might look at the RPI for Stetson last year at 247, and you're thinking, oh, okay, that's a given. No, that will be a very difficult game for a couple of reasons. First, you're coming off the Marquette game. So you go on a Thursday with Marquette. And this is an interesting stretch. Open the season against Iona on Tuesday. Thursday, Marquette. Stetson on Saturday. Like every other day. It's like an NBA schedule. So how are the legs going to handle that? And then Stetson, of course, is led by their head coach, Lynn Bria, who was a former UCF head coach here in the late 90s, led them to the NCAA tournament. I remember in the last decade, she's always been rumored in the mix anytime the UCF job opened. She runs a good system. She's a very successful coach. So that will not be very easy at all. Those first, the Iona game, they're a team at the bottom at the MAC. I'm fascinated by the fact that you've got 3 games in 5 days to start the year with powerhouse Marquette and a tricky Stetson team. I'm telling you, we learned this the hard way, boys, last year on the men's side with Stetson and Donnie Jones coming to UCF and winning. That's a tricky game there. Bryson brings up a great point. UNLV is really good. You got to go to their place. Then you've got to play Montana State on the West Coast there. That's a little tricky as well. And then, High Point was the regular season champions in the Big South. So I actually think from a non-conference standpoint, she is testing this team a lot more than last year going into Big 12 play, which I applaud. because you do have, the good news for this, I think if you're a UCF perspective is you hope that's a sign that she feels much more confident in this roster than she did a year ago. But we will learn more about this team in the non-conference, I think, this year than we did at any point last year.
Yeah, it's funny. Both elements of both what you, Eric Lopez, and Bryson Turner said is true, right? There's an element of tune-up in the early part of the schedule for the non-conference, like Bryson alluded to. And last year, I think she needed it pretty badly just because of the complete reboot and nature of the program. But to your point, to have a name like a Marquette, not necessarily. I mean, the Auburn thing was cool from a notoriety standpoint. If for the casuals that don't know better, an SEC team coming in the house, but Auburn not necessarily a great basketball program.
Bottom SEC team. Marquette's a top half Big East team. That's a team. In fact, Marquette's one of the teams that will challenge UConn in the Big East, as an example.
Top half of a basketball conference versus the bottom of a football one. It's a great point, Eric Lopez, that you bring in. Bryson Turner, let me jump back to you as we advertise here the actual conference schedule proper. And you make note here that there's some double headers that we have here on the schedule as well.
Yes. So there are a couple of dates where the men's schedule and the women's schedule cross over. And that is going to be on January 18th and February 1st for the women. On the 5th, on the January 18th, they will take on Oklahoma State, which is the same night that the men are going to be taking on Houston. So that's going to be a very fun day for UCF basketball fans. And then, funnily enough, the women are going to host Houston on February 1st, the same day that the men host BYU.
Well, there you go. So by the way, make sure you check out also our men's schedule reaction with our newcomer, Don Struble, and Donnie Docs himself will be in the building talking about that. Check that out. Back at Gold Banner at YouTube channel. I mean, what? Everyone's intimidated by the bell suddenly? What are we doing here? Anyways, no, with that in mind, Bryson, tell me about what you see here in the conference slate that gets your attention.
I think what gets my attention here is that what else can you say? I mean, I think the Big 12 is just as dangerous in the women's half of the basketball schedule as it is on the men's. It's just different teams.
Right.
It's just different teams that you kind of look at. For one, TCU is definitely going to be rebounded after the injury havoc that wrecked them last year. So you have them. And let's not forget, a lot of these teams made the NCAA tournament. The good news is that you don't have almost like a gauntlet where all of them are like condensed against each other. The most they'll play in NCAA tournament teams back to back is going to be early on in the schedule, and actually to start 2025, where they're going to have a New Year's Day matchup on the road in Morgantown against West Virginia. Then they host Arizona on the 4th, and then they go on the road to face Sweet 16 Colorado on the 8th. Fun fact, Colorado actually lost to Iowa in the NCAA tournament last year.
Right. Well, there you go. Eric Lopez, on the conference side, what jumps out to you?
Well, I'm looking at it. Obviously, in the Big 12, you've got 6 teams you're playing that made the NCAA tournament. The good news is you don't have a Texas anymore in the league with Vic Schaefer, Kyle. Remember Texas? That was the powerhouse team. And Oklahoma. Those were the 2 best teams in women's basketball in the league last year.
Absolutely right.
So you don't have that. So it's a little more manageable from that standpoint. West Virginia, as they like to do, the Press Virginia press. But I think what's favorable from a women's standpoint, it's a pretty balanced home and away. I think that's pretty good. I think that's helpful. It's manageable from that standpoint. Arizona, I know their record is misleading, 18-16. They're normally better than that. And even with that, they still made the NCAA tournament. Arizona is a team that a few years ago played for the national title. Be curious to see if they rise to the top in women's basketball like their men's team does. Colorado, remember last year, Colorado was the team that beat LSU last year in the regular season. It really took off from that standpoint. UCF's got to go to Colorado. That's tough. Got to go to West Virginia early. That's tough. At TCU, at Iowa State. Those are the road games they got. They certainly did not get any favors in that regard. And boy, there's a lot of traveling. The one thing, got to go to Colorado, got to go to Utah and BYU. I'm looking at February 5th and 8th, boys. I would assume the ladies are going to be going to Provo, play on a Wednesday, probably stay in Utah. Do they stay in Utah and then play Utah in Salt Lake that Saturday, I would assume, right?
Yeah, you'd have to, I would think. Yeah.
How do they handle that will be interesting.
Good question.
One game that I will be interested to see is we're going to be hosting Baylor, which means Sytia Messer is going to be welcoming her former team to the Edition Financial Arena. And let's not forget that UCF actually played Baylor really close in Waco last year. 77-74 was the final score of that one. So I'll be very interested to see what Sytia Messer will be able to do against Baylor with a home court advantage on her side. I feel like that could be a really interesting game for UCF to try and gain, either play spoiler or really showcase itself against Big 12 opponents, because I feel like that's what you really want to do with a schedule like this. UCF last year finished last in the Big 12. You're really looking for improvement this year, and you want to look at points in the schedule where you're able to get those things.
I'm going to correct myself. This is what happens when you play in a Duff league. I said 6 teams from the NCAA tournament they're playing on. It's actually 9. It's actually 9. I forgot to roll down on the list of the schedule. That's how deep the league is.
You got to scroll down to find everybody.
Got to go further down, man. It's like, oh my God, I thought we were done with this. Nope. No, we're not.
So, with this in mind, Liz, I know which ones I'm suiting up for. I make a lot of games, to be honest. I'm looking forward to see Sytia play her old team in Baylor. Personally, I think that's the one that jumps off kind of me. That Oklahoma State game, them coming back, it jumps off to me because that was their home Big 12 opener last year, and they darn near won that game. But those, they're right together as it would work out. That's pure serendipity, I would assure you. But I'm curious to see those go, and assuming I can make both of those are the games I'm most excited for myself. Any other throw-ins you guys want to throw out there?
Well, first of all, I just realized the West Virginia road games on New Year's Day.
Yes.
What? Okay, that's a little different. The first conference game will be at home against TCU on December 21st. Go ahead, Bryson. What jumps out?
Well, that Oklahoma State game, Kyle, that you were talking about, that's going to be a fun little game for UCF transfer Hannah Gusters, who came to UCF from Oklahoma State. So that will certainly be a good storyline to follow in that one there. As far as everything else, Baylor, I mentioned earlier, BYU will certainly be interesting. We have to go to Provo. We played them pretty close at home this year. It'd be interesting to see how they respond to that. Texas Tech is going to be we beat them on the road last year. We welcome them to Edition Financial Arena this time around. And Iowa State, I think that Iowa State home matchup is going to be very interesting, Eric, because UCF actually beat Iowa State 71-66 last year at home. And so that is going to be a very interesting matchup, because I would say that was like one of the UCF women's programs. Like, I would say it's marquee win last year.
Oh, by far. Yeah, by far. It was
Iowa State. Now, obviously, going on the road to face Iowa State is completely other matter. If you can get a win there, then I think that would be huge for a reputation. And so the fact that UCF was able to beat them at home last year will be interesting to see what they can do in Ames. But that rematch late in the season at Edition Financial Arena, that's a home finale, by the way, senior night. So that's going to be a big matchup for UCF. And if they can beat Iowa State again, that I think could do some, even if UCF has a very bad season, if you can win that senior night game, I think that could be a very nice note to end the season on Edition Financial Arena for the future. Because like you mentioned, Kyle, this is a pretty young team. Like, there's a lot of underclassmen on this team that I feel like can be very much linchpins of this team in the years to come.
Sure. They were like when they came in as freshmen, the Angela Cots,
Cal Nagodus.
Yeah, thank you. The Nagodus, all those types of players, and I say that just because I don't want to list all of them. There's enough of them that would take a while. But the punchline is, if they're getting in a place where they can settle down, dodge foul trouble, do something to get other assets beyond Caitlin Peterson to put points in the bucket, then we're looking at a really good thing there. A very compelling and a very difficult group to do battle with on the hardwood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am very excited to see what this women's basketball team is able to do. They got some really good additions. I think Sytia Messer has proven herself to be quite the recruiter, from getting Caitlin Peterson from the transfer portal, finding both Kial Nagodu and and of course Akot, and now she has a new group of 5 freshmen that are looking quite interesting in Summer Yancey, Emily Rodriguez, to name a couple. And I wouldn't be surprised maybe if some of them ended up getting some playing time right away, just like Nagodu and Akot did last year. And depending how they sort out, this will be a very interesting team indeed that is already going to be sending off, of course, Caitlin Peterson, a linchpin of the team's success they had last year, and Layla Jewett, who I would say is the biggest piece of the Coach Abe era that is left on this roster. She is in her senior season this time around.
Certainly the OG. By the way, we hope to get all of them more FaceTime on October 9th if everything holds. That is the proposed day we've heard so far for basketball.
Well,
media
I think
day.
there's 4 games to circle here, in my view, that could determine how the season goes here, that I'm looking at here. You got February 1st and March 2nd. You got Houston, both games. Houston 101. They were the team you were right there with in last place. You got to at least split, maybe win both of those games.
Mm-hmm.
Houston, from what I understand, their coach is in their final year of this season, so he's fighting for his job over there with a new AD, by the way, in Houston, and Eddie Nunez. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at February 2nd against Arizona State, 117.
February 12th.
Home in the Big 12 there. And then the 4th game that I'm looking at is Cincinnati at home, Saturday, January 11th. They've been a bugaboo for them. Got swept by them last year. They're 94 in the RPI. The reason I circle those 4 games, everybody else in the conference is 83 or better from last year's RPI. So if you want to move up in the standings, those are 4 games where I think you got to go at least 3-1, guys. And then maybe you could steal some games where you're going to be underdogs against other teams, in my view. That, to me, those 4 games, can you go 3-1, get yourself 3 conference wins, and maybe get to that, maybe can help you get to 6-7 wins in conference, which will be a massive improvement. If you struggle against those teams I just mentioned, let's say you go 1-3, it could be another long year at the bottom of the league.
You got to get those ones you're supposed to get.
I would say it's winnable because you're at home in the most part, and it's toss-up games, to your point.
Yeah.
Let's remember, by the way, that the Big 12, that Cincinnati, Eric, competed in the WNIT this past season to represent the Big 12. They ended the season 5-13.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Whoa. First of all, no, with all due respect to the WNIT, it is not the same as the men's NIT. The WNIT, I mean,
but
they have a larger. Yeah, they. Let me put it this way, if Kyle and you could get 4 buddies of yours from the street, you could probably make the WNIT as long as you got a check. All right, that's all I'm saying. If you write a check, all right, you get in. So Cincinnati was below 500. I wouldn't read too much into that. That's one of those where, hey, it reminds me a little bit more of the women's WNIT. In fact, I'm not even going to get into it, but the women's postseason is all out of whack right now because there's like multiple tournaments beyond the NCAA. There's this big fight about the WNIT is not an official NCAA tournament. The NCAA has their own version. So anyway, I would compare the WNIT and women's basketball to kind of a CBI. Remember the CBI guys back in the day when Donnie, UCF made it and then didn't make it because it got wiped away. Anyway, so let's let's not pump up Cincinnati like there's some juggernaut. They were 400, 500, and probably wrote a check to say.
So in that case, you're talking about the WBIT then, I believe is the one you're talking about, which invited, which got TCU and BYU.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one that, yes, that's the one I would highlight.
Okay, so so TCU and BYU both it ended this year at 83. And then TCU was actually 48 in the RPI. They just had a really bad conference slate because of all the injuries that they have. Both of them went 6-12 in conference play. So I would honestly say that what you really want, I think, expectation wise, is just improvement. Get out of the basement. I would say the ceiling, the absolute ceiling, that I think I would expect from this team is WBIT. If they make the NCAA tournament, I'm gonna go crazy, but I'm not expecting that at all. I think WBIT might be the ceiling for them, to me.
There you go. Okay. Well,
it'll be interesting to see too of the home games. Is there a draw that will get casual people to your building? Like we've spoken on the men's side, Kansas will get those people, right? Sell out and all that. Coach Messer has talked about how the Big 12, I believe, is number 1 or number 2 in the country in attendance in women's basketball. We saw that watching games when UCF was on the road and how other programs draw. Who is going to be that program that people will go see? I think that's not just a UCF question from their standpoint, but just the league-wide question. Who takes over for Texas as that marquee draw in the league? I think will be a storyline within the Big 12.
No, I think that's a fantastic take as well. But listen, with all that in mind, we do have the season previews that'll be coming up here pretty soon. I would imagine shortly after the Gators football game there up in Gainesville, where UCF will be headed. And of course, I will be in attendance, by the way, for the Black and Gold Banneret. But yeah, I'd be looking for the basketball preview shortly after that. But and then maybe get set up. We got the media day, as I mentioned, is allegedly supposed to be October 9th from what we're hearing.
We're going to have a lot of basketball content, folks, in the month of October.
That's what we're talking. That's the niche. That is the long of the short of it. So I think this is a good place to put a bow on it for now. So for the great Bryson Turner, the incomparable Eric Lopez, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. That's our women's hoops schedule reaction. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.